Hey everyone, and welcome to Sasquatch Theory. In this episode, we have William back on the show to share more of his eye-sighting encounters. I was really amazed when he told this story, and I just had so many questions to ask. People often wonder what it would be like to see a Sasquatch up close and personal, and to have that opportunity to openly communicate with it without it ripping your head off, of course. William describes what it's like to be up close and personal with a Sasquatch. He talks about their description, their language, what it smelled like, and so many more details. I know a lot of people have been waiting for this episode, and it's a pleasure to have you all as my listeners. If you are new to Sasquatch Theory, please like and subscribe. And if you have your own personal cryptid encounter to share, please contact me at sasquatchtheory@outlook.com. Alright guys, let's dive straight into William's Bigfoot encounters here on Sasquatch Theory. All right, William, welcome back to Sasquatch Theory. How are you doing today, sir?
Good, Miguel. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing excellent, and it is a pleasure to have you back on the show. I know everyone that was listening really enjoyed your encounters. I know you wanted to update us on some things that you mixed up, so if you would, just update us on whatever you had twisted and get into your story, and we'll figure it all out.
Okay, yeah, I really do appreciate the feedback. I was really surprised by it. I got watery-eyed there. I went, wow. It was very, very nice comments. I had the trail that I was on with the encounter following my dog mistaken. I was going up Corbin Hollow and down or over Robertson Mountain, which is one loop south of the one that I was confused with, which would be going up Nicholson Hollow and connecting with Indian Run and then going down or over Corbin Mountain. I had to look at the map. I sat there thinking about it when I listened to the podcast and went, wait a minute, that's not quite right. I wasn't on Corbin Mountain. I was on a different one, and it was Robertson. It's been a while. I hadn't looked at the map for a little bit, so I had to look at that. But the one thing that kind of stood out, I should have remembered this, is that there's a section of that loop for about 100 yards or 150 yards that you're on Old Rag Fire Road. So at the top of Corbin Hollow, you make a left there, and then you're on Old Rag Fire Road, and then you make another left on Robertson Mountain, which is really steep and rocky. It's narrow, and, that was the trail I was on. There's no mistaking. But he wouldn't walk on the fire road. He stayed well off the fire road, maybe 60 or 70 yards in the woods. But he didn't mind walking on the trail. He didn't mind following me on Robertson Mountain Trail until he was called home by his enormous parent, who screamed for him and freaked me out because I'd never heard a scream that loud or that powerful, even at a zoo or anywhere like that, not even close. So that was one that I thought, if anybody knows anything about that section of Shenandoah Park, they're going to go, wait a minute, where were you? How did you get from Nicholson Hollow over to Corbin? They'll kind of think I'm confused there. Yeah, I did. I had two circuits that are adjacent to each other. You could kind of make a figure eight out of them. I had them confused. So when I looked at it, I said, no. I went up Corbin Mountain, and then there was that stretch on the fire road that he wouldn't get near the fire road, but it was just like 100 yards or so. So once I got on the trail, then he got behind us.
Okay. Yeah, it's no worries, and I appreciate you clearing things up. If you would continue with your encounters and where you left off. I know everyone's eager to hear the rest of it.
Well, the last one was where I encountered who I take to be a larger, not necessarily adult, but a grown-up, like young adult maybe, version of the one that was much smaller, who followed me and my dog. And I think that was the following me and my dog in that Robertson Mountain Corbin Hollow loop day was, I believe, 95 or 96. I kind of have everything figured out around when I had a knee injury and surgery, which I think I also said that was in 98. That was in 97. That was the early summer of 97. I think it was, July when I had the surgery. So the encounter at the shelter on the AT just south of Mary's Rock in the winter would have been then. That was after my knee surgery, and that was in March. So that would have been March of 98. That would have been in the winter. Well, there was still snow on the ground up there, but not at the bottom. Although, it snows on in the March. So I'm pretty confident that that's the date of that. And I hiked in that area quite a bit, White Oak and Cedar Run Canyon and Hawksbill, and anybody who's familiar with Shenandoah Park or from the east side of it knows those trails are very, very popular. They're very crowded. And anyone who wants to park there on a weekend, whether it's on the Nether side or the Syria side of Old Rag Mountain, knows you have to get there really the day before. But if you get there on a Saturday, you're going to probably hike at least a mile to the trailhead. It's very crowded. And so, that's a popular area. So I thought, well, somebody's probably going to know that I was a little bit not completely clear with that. But the counter up on Mary's Rock was in 98. And I had also, previous to that, gone and found a place in West Virginia that I wanted to camp. I had driven out to Seneca Rocks, which is a pretty common place for people to go rock climbing. And it's pretty well known. It's been well known for a long time. Anyone who's listening probably say, oh, yeah, I've been to Seneca Rocks, somewhere out there. And I walked up to the top of Seneca Rocks and looked west at what's called the Allegheny Front. And it's Allegheny Mountain. It's a very long mountain range. It's the Eastern Continental Divide, and there's an area up there called Dolly Sods and Roaring Plains, and there's a gas pipeline that goes through Roaring Plains. I looked at it from Seneca Rocks, the lookout platform. I wasn't rock climbing. I was just hiking up the trail there. And I thought, my God, that must be a pretty cool area. I got to go up there and check it out. And down at the visitor center, they have a big relief map that's horizontal. It's not on the wall. It's laid out. And I looked at it and said, I got to go up there. I got to see this area. I asked the lady at the visitor center something about the road because there was snow, but it hadn't been a rough winter. There hadn't been much snow. And she said, oh, yeah, be careful. People get stuck up there and then have to get, rescued. And it's kind of a pain to. I said, well, I don't think there's that much snow up there. I mean, there hasn't been much, but I just got all the cautionary kind of stuff. So I drove up the road from, I think it's Jordan Hollow, and up the eastern slope or eastern side of Allegheny Mountain, which is one way that you access Dolly Sods in that area. And once you top out there, you're either go right, which is the road that accesses Dolly Sods, or you can keep going straight, and then eventually you go down and go to a town called Laneville. Well, to the left, and this is all new territory for me. I've never been up here before. There was a road, I think it's Forest Road 71 or 70, and it was ungated. They gated in the summer because you can't really fit two vehicles on it most places. If two people meet, somebody has to back up a long way. So there was nobody up there, but there were tracks on it, and the snow was only like 4 or 5 inches deep. And I had a four-wheel drive. I thought, well, I'll just drive out this road. And I drove out to the end of it, and there was rime frost out there on the trees. And I didn't do any hiking. I had a little doggy with me, little terrier, and I just fell in love with the place immediately. I got out of the vehicle and looked around. I didn't have any time to go hiking or explore much, but I said, oh my, I found like my, Shambhala or Shangri-La or whatever, this is the vibe, the atmosphere of the place was extraordinary. And so I said, okay, I've got to come back up here and go camping, and went back down to the visitor center, and it was still open. Told them, that's the most amazing area I've ever been, in the rime frost and everything. And rime frost is when, if people don't live where it gets really cold, you get this crust around everything. It's not just like a normal frost. It's a real heavy crusted frost. And the rime is an old ship. So it's RIME, and it's the frost that would build up toward the wind on the ships. So that's why they call it rime frost or rime ice, or sometimes they call it hoar ice, but it's HOAR, not WHORE. So I had a buddy who went hiking with me a lot. I bought the guide to hiking the Monongahela, which is a national forest in West Virginia. And I said, man, we have got to go up here. We have got to plan a trip up here. So that spring, I think it was spring up there. It was probably early June or late May. You're talking 4,500 feet of elevation. So the seasons are, a month later, or summer's a month later anyway. And spring lasts another month, and winter's another month or two longer. It can get pretty cold and rough up there. We decided we'd take a trip, and he worked nights. So I said, well, this is the weekend we've got. I'll pick you up at night when you get off work at a restaurant, and we'll just drive up there, and we'll walk up the road, and then we'll go up to the pipeline swath and go left and find a camp spot up there in the middle of the night. So that's what we did. It was foggy. It had just rained, but it was supposed to clear up. And the hiking guide had said that there were extraordinary views if you went east on the pipeline swath from that Forest Service road. Also, I know the road was not open. The road was gated when we went up there. So I think they gated sometime in the early spring so that it doesn't get a bunch of traffic. And anyway, so yeah, I drove up it that winter, but then it was gated when we were going to on our camping trip. And it was a 3.5 mile walk from the parking area to the pipeline swath. You could tell when you got in the spruces. Now it's probably midnight, 1 in the morning. Now it's probably about 1 to 2 in the morning actually. And so, you make about a little less than 3 miles an hour in the dark, but it was on a road. And then get to the pipeline swath, which has somewhat of a trail on it. And there's rivulets or creeks kind of running down it. And we just walked up to the top until we topped out on the plateau. Now, this area is a huge plateau. It's something, there was a story that, there was a gentleman that you had on who I really liked his stories about Grand Mesa, Colorado. Now, this area is not as big as Grand Mesa, but it's kind of like the Grand Mesa of the East. And if you look at a relief map or anything like that, it stands out. And Dolly Sides and Stony River is kind of the north end of it, and Red Creek goes down the middle of that. There's not much elevation change, but it's a concave. Roaring Plains, which is to the south of that, it's more of a rounded, convex, I guess you would say, but the water drains off better. Dolly Sides is very wet, very soggy. Dolly Sogs or Dolly Bogs, or make sure you hike with muck boots, and that's how that is. Roaring Plains, you can stay a little drier. And that's where I also read this is where I'd driven to, so this is where I was going to go. And we got and picked a camp spot on the pipeline swath where we had topped off. At the point we just said, okay, we got to find a spot here. And there was a little, I would say a knoll, but a raised area with an existing fire pit there, as a matter of fact. So that was cool. So we put our tent there. It was an old 3-man Coleman dome tent, not a really, super great tent, but it was all right. And pitched that, and it's, 2, 3 in the morning. So it was all right. Let's, we'll sleep here, and then tomorrow take a day hike out toward what they call Flat Rock Plains. Well, something, I didn't hear anything that night, but he insisted, this is my buddy, I'm going to call him Alan, that something was out there walking around, and it sounded like it was on 2 legs. And I just kind of went, well, I don't know. Maybe there are wild people up here. I have no idea. I've never been up here before, but it wouldn't surprise me, but whatever. And we also had something throwing little, pebbles at the tent. And this is through the middle of the night. Also, he went out to take a piss one point, and something got growled at him. And I didn't hear it. It didn't sound like anything to me. I thought, you're just hearing the water droplets fall on the tent, but we weren't really under a tree. And he said, no, something's out there. And I said, well, whatever. I mean, it's not, maybe it is. It doesn't sound like a bear or something like that. This area does have a lot of bears. And that morning, there were a few little pebbles, not big rocks, I mean, small rocks at the bottom of the side of the tent where he said something was throwing pebbles at the tent. And sure enough, something was hitting the tent, but it wasn't hitting it hard. I mean, it was enough to where we could even argue about what it was and what it wasn't until the next morning. And I'm looking and going, maybe they were already there. And he said, no, they weren't already there. I said, well, how do you know? It was foggy last night. How would you even have an idea? So I'm not sure if anything's out there watching us, but maybe there is. We didn't go there looking for that for sure, but I said, all right, whatever. And so I said, we'll hide our food down in those rivulets that are going down the steep part of the pipeline swath. I had these plastic containers that were, I think they were also Coleman. This is all budget stuff, I wasn't spending a ton of money back then on camping equipment, but you could put eggs and things like that in them. And it was perfect because I put all the perishable food or the stuff that had maybe a smell to it, an odor to it, in those little plastic containers, and then put them underwater and put rocks over top of them. So I said, okay, bears aren't going to smell that. You don't want to have food. You shouldn't have any food in your tent in bear country, but you certainly don't want to have food that's easily smelled. Something like sausages and ham and things like that. And that day, we took a hike out into Flat Rock Plains, which you go back down or back west on the pipeline swath, and then you go more or less where the road would continue, make a left and go up that way. So that was pretty cool. And came back, tried at that point to cut a shortcut across the trail and ended up getting almost lost. And then walking back uphill, because the way I know where the trail is, it's at the top of this hill, so we're not really, really lost. But let's go back up there, and we're going to have to get back and cut a bunch of firewood or go search for firewood. And when we got back up by where the little fire pit was, which was already there, was existing. It was a nice little fire pit made with these flattish rocks that are real common on some of the mountains around here. By the way, I've been there recently, and that fire pit's not there anymore. And I can't even hardly tell which one of those high spots we camped on. It's grown up so much. But this was, over 25 years ago or so. And we saw a bunch of rather large, kind of unwieldy pieces of wood by the freaking campfire place. And I said, well, I don't know who the hell put that there, but I mean, that's cool. We guess we don't have to go searching for firewood very much off in the dense spruce forest. And these are younger red spruces. These aren't, but it's very dense. And the fauna up there, the flora up there is like red spruce, elderberry, lots of heath, blackberries, and huckleberries, and blueberries. There's some blackberries too, but not really many. Lots of mountain ash trees, some smaller oaks. They weren't really the big, tall red oaks that you see down lower in the forest that are common there. There's I think they're post oaks or something like that. There may be some of them as red oaks. Red oaks have a different kind of leaf. I think some of these are a different oak tree, but they don't get as big. And there are red oaks up there too. So it's kind of a forest that's coming back. That area was some history on that area. The Dolly sod there is named after a Dutch family, the Dolly family, who moved to the Petersburg area, which is down in the low spot to the east of the valley, the Potomac Valley, actually, to the east. And they thought that'd be a great place to raise sheep in the summer. This was back when I think merino wool had gotten out and everybody was trying to do it. So they tried clearing areas up there and raising sheep, and every animal up there thought it was the best idea ever. And so they lost all their sheep. Well, let's say every predatory animal up there thought it was. I mean, there would have been wolves and and more cougars and stuff like that too. And I don't know what they were thinking. I guess coming from Holland and then moving to the valley, they thought, oh, it'd be just like that up there, but no. So that was what it was named after. Was the Dale family. I don't speak Dutch. Later, it was a place of Civil War battles, and this is where the forest changed because it was set on fire. I don't know which side did it, but the area was set on fire and burned. Now, there were fires that were a result of logging and exposing the peat in other areas, but this one, I think, was during the Civil War period, so it was never really heavily logged. But some area obviously was, because there are railroad grades up there, and everywhere you go around here on the mountains, in any of these counties in West Virginia, Pocahontas, Randolph, Greenbrier, you'll see these old railroad grades, and a lot of them were turned into trails by the CCC camp guys back in the 30s. This was to log. So evidently everything didn't burn, because otherwise there wouldn't be so many railroad grades up there. But that changed the forest a lot. So you don't have, probably at that time, you would have had a mature spruce forest all over those tops, and maybe some American chestnut and things like that. The far northern end of Dolly Sods was used as some sort of, not testing, but training grounds during World War II, I think. I'm not sure about World War I, but II. And and there's still signs up there that say, be careful of munitions that are spent that may be found if you go off trail. They've done a heck of a job trying to find all that stuff. That's more at the northern end of Dolly Sod. So that area was shelled pretty heavy in training exercises, apparently, because it was an area that was seen as equivalent to maybe some of the areas that we're going to be that fighting in Europe was taking place in. So it's not an undisturbed area at all, but it's gotten incredibly wild as it's grown back. Oddly enough, the disturbances created a heath and rhododendron and mountain laurel, and there's something up there called Piers Montana, which looks almost like mountain laurel, and it rattles when you walk against it in the summer, and there's also rattlesnakes up there, so that's always unnerving. And so, I mean, I'm not trying to give too much context here and get off on tangents, but it's a pretty wild area, but it's not an undisturbed area. There's a very few virgin forests in the state of West Virginia. I think one area is about 150 acres, and then there's some small patches. So it's been, over the years, very disturbed, but it is very wild. Okay. So back to the trip back from Flat Rock Plains back to the campsite, and we find this, firewood, but these kind of unwieldy large pieces, nothing I would have dragged out of the woods, and then some smaller stuff. And I couldn't explain how it got there. It wasn't there last night, unless we missed it. Maybe some of it was, but certainly not all of it. And, okay, well, we've got firewood. I don't think somebody else is trying to claim our campsite and went and did this, because nobody else is here, or nobody else put their tent up. You think somebody had maybe decided they want to camp there too, and they went out and got firewood before we did, but that's not what happened. So that night we had the campfire, and then it was not a full moon. It was like after the full moon. So it was a late moon, but it was still a big moon. So once it did come up, it was very bright. It was a beautiful night, absolutely beautiful night, crystal clear, perfect weather, everything. But something there again starts throwing small rocks or pebbles, and not hard either. And it's throwing them at me and at my buddy. And we start accusing each other of throwing pebbles when the other one's not looking. I'm like, man, why you keep throwing rocks at me? He said, I'm not throwing rocks. Something's throwing rocks at me. I said, well, I'm not throwing rocks at you. I'm over here tending the fire. And, then I picked up a rock and threw it kind of fast off into the brush. I'm kind of going, all right, I don't know if something's out there or not, but, what the hell? So I decided to throw a rock a little bit harder than I should have, probably, out into the brush. It hit something, but I didn't, don't know what it hit at that point. But I turn around and, within about 30 seconds, a rock, not a big rock, thank goodness, but a rock gets flung pretty fast and hits me right in the tip of the elbow. I was like, ow, it didn't hurt horrible bad. I had a sweatshirt on too. I still have that sweatshirt, but I'm like, what the hell? So something's got to be out there, but it's hiding, and it's, it's not I'm not sure, but I'm thinking maybe wild people, but this isn't, I'm not settled on it. My buddy's a little bit more leaning towards that, but he don't say wild people. He just says Bigfoot. And I'm like, all right, whatever. I'm not sure that's what this is, but something did just throw a rock at me, and I know a daggone regular animal's not going to do that. But we had no more any kind of incidents that night and went to sleep. The next day, I had planned to go east on the pipeline swath to where the hiking guide said there were incredible views. And so, once we get going, it's probably, 10 or 11 or something like that. Another beautiful day, absolutely perfect day, partly cloudy, and just everything was brilliant. We walked down the pipeline or out to the end of where the plateau is and start going down a hill and cross a little creek down there. And my buddy gets sick to his stomach. I don't know if it's because of drinking the water up there, which we were not filtering, we weren't boiling or anything like that. I just was like, well, it's got enough acidity from the spruce needles that we should be fine. And, I kind of am a little bit, I'll say maybe a little bit careless drinking water out of those creeks sometimes. You don't want to do it where there's beavers upstream of it because of Giardia, but I didn't think there was any beavers upstream where I was getting the water because it was from those rivulets. So I wasn't really worried about it. But he gets sick to his stomach, so he goes down and sits in the creek and, relieves himself out, I guess both ends really, to be honest. And he said, man, I'm going back to the tent and lay down. I said, all right, well, I'm going to go walk out here to the end of the forest boundary and see if I can find these views. Because I was really intent on finding where these awesome views were. They aren't where we were initially camping. I said, I'll come back to the tent, though, and check on you and see if you feel, up to staying. So I walk out there to where the boundary is, and you can see Champ Rocks and Seneca Rocks, and the view is absolutely stunning. I mean, it's just jaw-dropping, breathtaking. I found pretty much what I was kind of looking for. Now, it's at the end of the pipeline swath in the forest, but of course the pipeline continues all the way, I think, to the coast, honestly. So it's, it's not the end of the pipeline swath, but it's the end of the forest boundary. And there's a sharp drop off there. That's why you have this incredible view to the east. And I went, my God, man, I gotta go back and tell them about this. Well, when I turned around and walked back, I look slightly to the north and up at the top of the hill, and I noticed at the top of that hill up there is meadow. And that looks like it would be an even better view of the same thing because it's higher up, and it's grassy, and it's got some spruce thickets and stuff like that. And I just think, man, I got to go out there. Now I found the view, but I found a better place to see it from. And this is probably what the hiking guy was talking about. But let me go back to the tent and see how my buddy's doing. So I'm walking back up the pipeline swath toward the tent. It's broad daylight. It's like, 2, 3 in the afternoon maybe. And the tent's sitting on a high spot, but it's probably not more than 2 feet above most of the pipeline swath. The pipeline swath is about 60 feet wide or so, maybe 40 to 60 feet. It's grassy. And I can kind of make out that there's somebody there on the around the tent. And as I get closer and closer and closer, it looks like there's fur. Like, oh my goodness, is somebody up here wearing a fur coat or something? And who in the hell is he talking to? And I get closer and closer, and then finally I round the tent more or less to where the tent's blocking the view, and I see this rather, tall, wild, hairy Sasquatch kind of crouched down, and his knees are bent and his waist is bent, and he's down close to my buddy's face, looking right at him, holding that one of those boxes that I said I put the food in, one of those little dark green plastic boxes. And I just stood there like, oh, this is going to be interesting. And he's standing there less than 2 feet from him. And he's not hurt. He's scared, but he's not freaking out. And I stop and then I look, okay, this is, just like not what I was expecting. But wow, there really are wild people. And then the Sasquatch turned to look at me, and he couldn't turn his head. Not entirely. He had to kind of turn his body, and he looks at me, but he's still crouched down. My buddy's about 6'1" or 6'2", and this thing is crouching down to be almost eye level with him. And then he stands up, and I'm just like, holy shit, he's fucking tall. He was probably 7'2" or so, but really lean. He wasn't bulky or anything like that. I looked at him, and I start walking toward the tent because I'm thinking, well, this is, they've already encountered each other. I've got to know what's going on here. And I'm maybe 20 feet away now. And as I walk toward the tent, the Sasquatch turns. He walks, the big Sasquatch stands up, and he towers over my buddy, absolutely towers over him. And he's got that plastic thing in his hand, and my buddy's like, just take it. And I'm like, don't give him the damn food. But anyway, what are you going to do, say no to Sasquatch? So he walks off behind the tent and goes down into the brush. And I walk up to where my buddy is, and I said, dude, I mean, what the hell? Who are you talking to there? And he said, well, now you've seen Bigfoot. I didn't think you'd believe me. And I said, where'd he go? And he said he went right behind the tent. And I said, well, I can't see him. And there's a lot of brush back there, elderberries and things like that. But it's not so brushy that I shouldn't be able to see somebody 7 foot tall and kind of dark brown hair and lean. And I mean, he was very, very athletic, very muscular. The Sasquatch is right in my buddy's face. He's right 2 feet from him, and he's holding on to the Coleman plastic containers that I had put down in the rivulets. So this is kind of funny because Bear didn't get them, but Squatchy got them. And when he stood up, well, at first he looked at me, he turned to his right, and he has to turn his body some because that thing about them not having a neck, well, it's just, I don't know if it's traps alone that it restrict that, but they don't seem to have, at least the older ones, the articulation in their neck that we do. I wouldn't say he had no neck at all. But
so when he looked over, like his head didn't turn, like his body kind of turned along with his head.
His head turned too, and I mean, a person might kind of do this, but a person would much more quickly just, turn their head and look instead of, you see their whole shoulder girdle and torso turn or twist at the waist or above the waist.
Yeah.
And I was, stunned. I mean, this is not what I expected, even though my buddy had been saying, I know something's out there in the pebbles and the rocks and the giant pieces of firewood. It looked like driftwood, and there's no driftwood up there on top of that mountain. It was just that old and weathered. We didn't cut that piece up either. It was such a big piece. It was just like too much to put in the fire. But he turns and looks at me, and I'm looking at him, and I think, well, first of all, I notice his face doesn't have any kind of aggressive or angry look on it. It's remarkably free of hair around his face, but he's got these big old lamb chops. In fact, later on, or pork chops or whatever you want to call those sideburns, I think later on we were trying to come up with a name for him, and my buddy said maybe we should call him Pork Chop because of these big old sideburns he had. He had longer hair on his head than on his body, but it wasn't shaggy and it wasn't hanging down way past his shoulders or anything like that,
What color did you say he was?
He was a medium brown, and
Okay.
he was in full sun. I mean, this is in full sun, broad daylight, medium brown, very lean. I mean, long legs, extremely lean. And I don't mean skinny or anything like that, just not bulky. He's muscular, incredibly muscular. And all this I'm kind of taking in at once, but I can look right to his eyes. He's got big eyes, but they're very human looking. I've heard people talk about some cold black stare or something like that. I didn't see that at all in any of them. In fact, I think, their eyes were remarkably human, but much larger. I mean, their eye sockets are huge. His face is much larger. We guessed at about 7 to 7'2", somewhere in there. Probably closer to 7'2". He wasn't 8 feet tall or anything like that. Had really big shoulders, had long arms. Now, in the younger ones, it wasn't as remarkable how long their arms were compared to their body. On this one, it was. I wouldn't say down to his knees long, but well, maybe. I mean, I don't really remember a pose like that, but extremely long arms, but big arms. I mean, big, strong biceps. He worked out. I later on would joke, I wish I could look like that and go to the gym. Maybe minus the hair, but I mean, dude was he was jacked.
Yeah, no doubt.
And
With
so
the eyes
so he
though, could you describe them a little bit more? Were they round, and could you see like the white of its eyes, and did it have a color?
not from that distance.
Mm-hmm.
Later on in the dark, I could see his eyes real well. Of course, it was dark. Yeah, I didn't see. I can't. The whites of his eyes at that point, I don't recall, but I do remember later his eyes were like a greenish amber. Maybe almost a hazel or something. They were. I didn't. He did also in that. And I'll get to this later. He did have a an ability, I guess, to make his eyes shine red, but just in the light at a certain angle. And it wasn't like his whole eye lit up red or something. It was more like your eye looks red in a photograph with a flash. All those old flash cameras would make everybody's eyes red. It was more that kind of thing. And he had to reflect them off of the fire at a certain angle. I mean, they didn't just stay like that. But he had a wide nose, a real wide mouth. Later, I would get a good look at his teeth, huge teeth. I think this is the thing I've always wondered about dental remains, are the thing that are most persistent in most animals. And somebody saw these teeth. I don't know if they would recognize them as large human teeth. They were huge. He had big canines, but they weren't fangs coming out of his lips. But later on, man, did you see those freaking canines? Great day, like he's got some fangs, but they're not cartoonish. They're not, there's somebody who has really good, canines and you notice them. It's like, wow, that's pretty cool.
What color were the
He had a
canines?
wide mouth. He had a very wide mouth, but he didn't have a real. I've said this with the other. Didn't have a real prognathous jaw, which is something you'd see in an ape or something like that. A
Mm-hmm.
wide mouth, but not this jutting out jaw. He had a wide face, wide head. I don't. It wasn't especially conical.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Somewhat maybe, but not especially. It wasn't markedly so.
Could you see the color of the teeth? Were they unusually white, or were they really yellow and dirty?
No, they weren't really white. I would get a good look at his teeth later on after dark, and this is where the story is going to end up going
Okay, yeah,
because I
continue.
didn't see when he ran behind the tent. I didn't see him until after dark. No,
Mm.
they look kind of yellow. They could have used a good cleaning.
Okay, the reason I say that is because the juvenile that I encountered, his teeth were like dental white, but I've seen dogs like
Really?
that, like German Shepherds, like their teeth are really white.
Yeah, I mean, dogs will live till they're 14, 15. I don't know what the lifespan of these guys are, and I don't know when they mature versus people, when they go through puberty and when they hit their growth spurts. I don't know. I have no idea. I've never seen two of them together. I've known of a second one being there when the one, what I think it was his parent called for him. I've never seen a female either. So, I mean,
Okay.
I can't say I know much about them on a social level at all, but on a personal interaction, I think I actually learned quite a bit from this one.
Yeah, if you would,
So,
just continue on with your story, and I'm all ears from here.
well, I was so I start walking towards the tent. I mean, he's standing there right in front of my buddy who's not hurt or anything. He's not been assaulted. I don't have any reason to be scared. I'm shocked, but this is just way too interesting. And so I start walking now toward the tent, which I said the pipeline swath is 40 to 60 feet wide. So I'm, no more than 20 feet from it at this point. And he stands up. He's got that container with the food in it in his hand and runs back or walks back into the brush. I say runs, but he walks and he moves quickly. And I'm like, what is he? Why is he getting away from me for? I don't know. It's just shyness maybe. And my buddy's just standing there in some kind of shock and disbelief, going, "Well, you seen Bigfoot," and he's taking it really well because he encountered this Sasquatch without me there, and he's not freaking out or crying or anything. So I have to give my buddy a lot of credit. He didn't break down in any way, but he's a pretty resilient and I would say he's a pretty bold dude in a lot of ways, but mentally so, you know. And he just said to me, he said, "Well, you seen Bigfoot. I'm glad you seen him. I didn't think you'd believe me." And I said, "Well, sometimes where there's one wild person, there's more. I don't know if there's more than one up here, but you just saw him, yeah." I said, "Well, what all happened?" Well, first I said, "Where'd he go?" And he said he went behind the tent somewhere. I said, "Well, how far did he go?" Because I mean, I wasn't, that far as I was walking toward the tent. When he walked off, though, it was a beautiful, graceful walk. I mean, did something that big moving as easily and as gracefully and as smoothly and as quietly as he did was pretty interesting. Now, the brush behind the tent is not like a laurel thicket or anything that dense. There's elderberries, there's an oak tree, there's a bunch of mountain ash, there's spruce thickets scattered around. I don't see how far he's gone, and I'm standing there right beside the tent on the kind of north of the tent looking around, and I don't see anything. So I start walking a little further, and there's a little bit of a slope, maybe down 2 or 3 feet. And as I get down the slope, something just takes off close to the ground in the underbrush. There's this massive commotion, and it shocks me, it startles me, because I was looking for him to be standing up and towering above everything out there. And then there's all this commotion at the ground. And I'm looking around, and I just don't see him. I'm like, how he's 7 feet tall and he's medium brown. How can I not see him? I'm right there. It's broad daylight. What is he? How's he hiding? There's no way. And I walk a little further, and that was when I kind of got a warning growl. I got this deep, resonant vibration, and there was a sense of fear and warning behind it. And there was also a smell that came back. It was rather quick. It was like a very musky smell. And I got kind of serious because at first I'm like, where the hell is he? Where'd he go? And then when I got that message, I guess you would say, I was okay, buddy. It's okay. We're not going to hurt you. I'm not going to come out there any further. And so I just turned around, and the tent's no more than 3 feet, 4 feet from me. So I turned around and said, "Well, what all happened?" And he said, "Well, when he came back up to lay down after being sick to his stomach," I'm asking my buddy this. I'll call him Alan. That's not his real name, but he said, "I saw legs sticking out of the tent. And I thought it was a bear in the tent at first. And then I realized, this is what he's telling me. He said, I realized, oh my God, those aren't bear legs." And so he said he was standing maybe 20 feet or so from the tent, just looking at it, not sure what to do. And the big guy knew somebody was there and got out of the tent real quick and looked at him and ran off. And he said, I was just scared. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know if I should go back to the tent or just go all the way back to the truck. I figured I'd wait for you to come back. But he had gotten in the tent, gotten in one of the backpacks, taken some food out that was non-perishable, or maybe it was like nuts or something like that. We had snack food in there in the tent. I know you're not supposed to in bear country, but I mean, people do these things. Sometimes they take these chances. And it wasn't a bear anyway. To get in the tent, though, he didn't tear into it. He used the zipper of the tent door, which was facing west, and got in there and smelled awful. So all of both sleeping bags just stunk. So my buddy said he took the sleeping bags out and aired them outside. It wasn't horrendous, but it was there. And if you put the sleeping bags up to your nose, you're like, ooh, God. That's a musky kind of nasty, not a human body odor, but some of a musky smell. And I said, well, man, I found the view I was looking for, but I want to go back and see if this other place is even better. I said, are you doing okay now? You want to lie down some more? And he said, I don't know. I just want to go back to the truck. And I said, well, I mean, why you want to go back to the truck, man? You got to see this view. We're spending another night up here. And he said, I don't, with that, I've always been here since we got here. You know, he's getting a little more familiar. That could be a problem, but I wasn't really interested in walking all the way back to the truck at this point. I'm really obsessed with this view I've found, and I wanted him to see it. I said, the next time we come camping up here, that's where we should go camping. And at this point, I think he's probably wondering if he's gonna go camping up here again. But I said, well, look, I'm gonna walk out there. It's about half to three quarters of a mile, I'm guessing, and then I'll come back. And if it's what I think it is, we got to go out there before the sun goes down. I mean, you got to see this place. And so he, was like, okay. And I think he was going to probably just leave and go back to the truck. He said, if I'm not here when you get back, I'm going back to the truck or Bigfoot took me away. And I said, well, you're still here. What is he going to take you away and do with you? I'm kind of joking at him. And he's just kind of like, yeah, fuck you. You're going to leave me here. I said, well, I don't know if I'm leaving you here or not. I mean, you've already been here, and I'm not really willing to leave tonight. I mean, it's too far to walk back to the truck, and I got to see this view. So I walk out there to where you go east on the pipeline swath to right before it starts going downhill, and you make a left, which would be going north, and you actually walk a little bit toward Red Creek Plains, where you walk out into what they call the meadows and stay right on the rim right there. And I walked out there and I just went, man, this is like a religious experience. This is the most stunning, beautiful, gorgeous place I have ever seen. The day is perfect. The light's beautiful. There's no haze in the sky or anything like that. It's just phenomenal. And so I come back to the tent and I said, dude, you got to see this. You have got to see this. And he's like, all right, but if Bigfoot comes back, you got to deal with him. And I'm just going, what do you mean deal with him? I mean, deal with him in what way? He's here. I mean, he lives here probably. And we're just going to have to accept that. Other people camp up here. Other people hike up here. It's not an unknown, mysterious place. Heck, there's a gas pipeline swath and a road. I've never heard of anybody having any problems up here with anything as, wildlife goes, even with the bears. So, yeah, I don't think that even if there's wild people up here that there's anything particularly dangerous. And that one didn't seem to be at all aggressive or angry or anything. It's quite the opposite, shy maybe. And I did get the warning growl, but that was because I was kind of going in pursuit of him almost, or starting to. So I get my way, and this is back in the day where you had compact disc still, but this time I didn't have a Discman. I actually had one of these JVC boombox bazookas. It's cylindrical, and it's got bass speakers at either side or either end of it, and it runs off 8D batteries or something. And whenever I would go camping for a couple of days, it was always cool to have music at times. I mean, didn't want to play it all the time, but I like to have we had Led Zeppelin and of course Danzig, and he liked Monster Magnet and Tool and who about Judas Priest and things like that, probably the Doors. I mean, music that you would listen to when you're camping, right? And so I said, man, let's take the speaker back out there and play an album out there while the sun goes down. Now the sun's gonna be going down to the west, and we're gonna be looking east. But then you kind of see the night rise up off the valley. That's the way I put it. It'll get the sun setting to the west, but the view to the west isn't quite as good. You don't have as good of a western horizon. It is a stunning eastern horizon. So I said, man, let's just go out there. So we did, and he agreed. He said, man, I've never seen anything like this. This is so beautiful. And it still is. It's starting to grow up. I've been there recently. I've been there lots of times since then. It's starting to grow up enough to where where I used to like to camp at the meadows, there's a few oak trees that are starting to block the view, and you have to move a little bit south, just maybe 50 yards or so to still get that same effect. But, the forest is succeeding, and that's what's going to happen, so it's fine. But at the time, there's this rock there, too, and I still like sitting on that rock. That rock's pretty important. and it's a perfect seat almost. It's not built like a seat, but it's kind of smooth and rounded at the top. And anyone who's ever been up there and been to the meadows knows that rock I'm talking about. It's not huge, but it sits in a perfect place. So we sat out there for a while and played some music and watched the sun kind of, well, the night rise up off of the valley floor to the east, it looks like, while the sun sets in the west. And at one point while we were out there, the big guy was watching us evidently, even though we didn't see him there, because we heard him scream, and I thought maybe he was, singing along to something. I think that's the way I looked at it. So anyway, about an hour passed, and I said, "Well, we better go back to the tent now." And I'm pretty tired. I'm starting to get blisters on my feet now after all the walking, and I know the walk tomorrow is going to be, painful because of the blisters. And he said, "Well, if Bigfoot comes back around, you have to go deal with him." And I still am not sure what I'm going to deal with, but I said, "Okay, I'll interact with him, however." And so we went back to the tent. I was absolutely exhausted. His stomach wasn't bothering him anymore, by the way, and laid down to go to sleep. And it got dark, and I can't tell you what time of night it was, but the moon was starting to come up, and it was a couple days after the full moon. It was a late moon, so somewhere, I don't know, 10:30 or something like that. He said, "Well, he's back," and I said, "Well, where is he?" And I'm waking up, and we don't have the fly on the tent, the rain fly or anything like that, because there's no danger of rain. And he said, "Well, he's right outside the tent." So I looked through the screen of the tent and look up, and the moon's lighting up this face. It's just standing maybe 6 or 7 feet from the tent, looking down. And he said, "Well, you said you'd go talk to him or deal with him or whatever you're gonna do." And I said, "Yeah, I did. Just give me a minute to wake up." And I had a knee brace. I made sure to put my knee brace on, and I wore that whenever I walked at the time. It was a fitted knee brace, one of those molded ones. So I get out the tent and I just stand up and I'm looking at him from about 8 feet, and I just talk to him. I said, "You live out here. What are you doing? You have a place you stay?" I don't know what to say to him. I mean, what do you say to him? And he's just looking at me and he kind of grunts. And I got a little bit closer, and he didn't seem to have any aggressive action or fear driven action. I said, "No, it's okay, man." I said, "We're here, you're here, we're spending the night here. you know um how do you break the ice on this one? I'm not really sure. It's kind of it's weird, but it's also not, it's not so much exhilarating. It's almost it's surreal, because I'm standing 8 feet from him looking up and going, wow, he's fucking huge. I mean, he's every bit of 7 feet tall, massive shoulders, and he doesn't have a mean expression on his face at all. He kind of has an accepting one, but he's still not. I'm like, where is all this going? Is this going to be just a stand here and look at each other, or is there going to be some, other interesting interaction? Hopefully, it's good. I managed to get a little bit closer to him, and he walks a little bit closer to me, and I'm like, oh shit. But I don't get any scary vibes or anything like that. And I'm just looking at him, just stunned. I mean, at this point, it's really sinking in, because I've been around wild people. I've had them extremely close to me before, but now there's this person to person, if you will, almost interaction, and I don't know quite what to do with it or where to go. But I know that this is the night we're going to hang out. I mean, tonight we're going to hang out with Bigfoot, Sasquatch, wild dude, whatever. And I was just going, oh my God, this is real. This is insane. This is fucking amazing. You're real. And I just kept saying that. Obviously, he's real, but I didn't know what to say. And he talked back to me. He goes, something, he tried to say, you're real. And he came out in this really, but it was real deep. I can't do it. I don't want to try to imitate it. It was a very deep, resonant attempt at it. And my buddy's staying in the tent now. He's not getting out of the tent. I don't know what the tent's supposed to do for him, but this is all my show now, because I insisted on staying. I didn't want to go back to the truck and all this kind of thing. So now it's all, it's on me. And he goes, my buddy in the tent said, "Oh my God, that's crazy. He's talking back to you. He's using your words." And I think the intensity of the old thing got a little bit overwhelming for me. I mean, I started feeling dizzy and faint. I was just like, oh, wow, like this is more real than any of the other encounters. Um, I don't know why, but it is. It's that personal. And well, you've asked for this, and here you go. And I just short circuited, I guess, and I passed out. My whole I passed out right into him and halfway on the daggone rocks beside the fire. And I don't remember being at that, right there at that moment. I remember a little bit later, but then my friends looking at me next to the fire, and I guess the big guy kind of got, I don't know, maybe weirded out by that or freaked out. He backed up into where it was dark and you couldn't see him. My friend's like, "Oh my God," he's like right next to the fire. Now it's a smoldering fire. It's not really raging or anything like that, but we hadn't tended it for several hours. But I'm almost right over the rocks, and he goes, "I thought you were going to catch on fire," so I didn't know what to do. I figured I had to get out and move you. So my friend gets out of the tent. He grabs me and moves me away from the fire. And about that time, the big guy comes and right out of where it was dark into where you could see him. And like I said, the moon's high and the moon's bright. Well, it's not high, but it's bright and it's very strong. It's actually not, it's kind of, I don't know, on the horizon at about 9, 10 o'clock on the horizon or something like that, maybe a little higher. And so you can see pretty well with that moon. But he comes out, the big guy comes out and grabs me, I think by an arm and a leg, if I remember, because then he drags me into the middle of the pipeline swath. And I do vaguely remember that. I remember being dragged across the grass and just kind of in a half daze, like going, what the hell's happening? And then I'm just laying there. And I come to and get up and look around, and my buddy's back in the tent. He's got a light on in the tent. The fire's got a little bit of light on it, but not much. It's just glowing. I'm only about 15, 20 feet from it. And I sit up and I check my knee brace. First thing I do is check my left knee brace, make sure my knee brace is still on. That's the most important thing, right? And I said, "What the hell, man? What happened? Why am I sitting out here in the middle of the grass?" And he said, "Your buddy drug you out there." He said, "I thought he was going to drag you away and I'd never see you again. I didn't know what to tell your mom." And I said, "Well, where the hell is he going to drag me? Why?" And he said, "I don't know, man. It's just like I tried to get you away from the fire, and next thing he rushes in out of the darkness and grabs you, and I run back in the tent, and he drags you into the middle of the pipeline swath." So I'm laying there in the grass, just kind of stunned, going, all right, this is way too amazing of an experience to squander or mess up or screw up by just being overwhelmed by it. I'm like telling my brain, just get your fucking self in order. You're going to you're going to enjoy this, or you're going to make a use of this. You're not going to lose this opportunity, because I'm still kind of dazed, and I'm just, you come to after having passed out, you're not all there yet. But I'm almost having this conversation with myself and just saying, all right, just fucking calm down, relax. You're okay. You're not hurt. You're away from the fire. You're not catching on fire, so that's good. And I got up and walked up there by the tent, and I said, "Well, where'd he go?" And he said, "Well, he ain't far, wherever he is." And I said, "Man," "put some music on, dude. Just please put some, if you're going to just sit in the fucking tent, you can at least play DJ and put some music on." So I think he actually put on Monster Magnet, which was really appropriate, And I started talking out to where I thought he might be. I said, "It's okay, man. Come on back." And he came back slowly, and he's looking at me, probably thinking, "You're not going to fall out on me again, are you?" I don't know what he's really thinking, but it might be something like that. And he gets closer again. He gets close enough this time to where I can actually grab his arm or touch his arm. I didn't grab it in an aggressive way, but he had his arm out. I just was like stunned, mesmerized by how big his arms were, how massive his hands were, and how, like, I thought, this dude's forearm is bigger than my freaking, thighs. I mean, he's got forearm at least as big as my calves, or probably has forearms like an Olympic sprinter's calves. I mean, they're that big. They're just huge, and his arms are massive. And I'm just going, geez, I mean, this dude is a freaking beast. But I'm not in any danger, and I'm just going, okay, well, I I guess I can hold it together now. I'm not going to pass out anymore. I don't feel faint anymore. I'm not feeling overwhelmed or anything like that. And I don't, there was probably 5, 10, 15. I don't know how many minutes went by with me just sitting there saying random shit, like, well, where do you live? And well, what do you do out here, and how do you get along with the winters out here and all of this? I'm not getting any answers for that, but I don't know what else to say. I'm not having the conversation. Now the weird thing is though, my buddy's having this mind speak thing with him, and he seems to know what my friend seems to know what the Sasquatch is thinking. So he keeps telling me stuff like he's thinking this. I said, how do you know? He said, I can't explain it. I just know what he's thinking. I just know what he's, what he's trying to get across. And I don't have this at all. I can read body language a little bit and this kind of thing, but I'm not having any real mind speak kind of thing at all. And that would go on for a while. That was, I kept asking, well, what is he thinking? What is he saying? What is he this? What is he that? He really wasn't talking much, by the way. The Sasquatch at that point I don't think at that point, other than trying to say you're real and coming out like Erie, which later we would decide to call him, had actually spoken. I just got grunts and, kind of looks and that kind of thing. He was incredibly quiet, which was I thought kind of odd, but okay. And at some point, he just decided he wanted me to come with him down into the middle of the pipeline swath. And my friend in the tent said he wants to play with you. And I'm thinking, oh, great. I'm going to be some freaking play toy for some giant 7'2", 450 pound, maybe 450 pound, I'm guessing, just because of his leanness, but also his muscularity. Guy that, hopefully he goes easy on me, because I'm not sure that this is like a fair, I don't know about contest at all, but it's a kind of a dangerous situation. But I thought, hey, fuck, what do you get the chance to do this ever again in your life? I mean, you're going to squander this. You're getting a friendly kind of invitation to go play with Bigfoot somehow. I'm not quite sure where I'm going to go. At first, I don't know if I'm going to go off in the woods or what I'm going to do. And so I go, down the little slope there. It's not much of a slope, but get into the pipeline swath, and he wants to kind of like play wrestle. And I'm like, all right, try not to kill me or accidentally break my neck or something like that. And so this is how it kind of went. He would kind of push at me, and he wanted me to do the same back, and he just wanted to like roughhouse almost like a bro or something, like one of your buddies or your cousins or something like that. And at first it was scary. I'm worried about my knee as much as anything, but I realized he wasn't trying to hurt me. He wasn't being rough. I mean, God knows if he wanted to, he could just tear me limb from limb. He's not doing anything like that. And it ended up being actually kind of funny. I mean, he would let me try to get him off his balance. I remember one time I actually did. I managed to get him in grabbed him around the waist, and now his waist is pretty high. But I got him somewhat off his balance. Maybe he let me, or maybe he wasn't paying attention. And I thought that was I felt really like proud of that. And he came and gave me this look like, okay, that won't happen again. So what he would do is he would run off into the night where I couldn't see him, out of the moonlight, out of everything else. There's spruce thickets and everything else. And then he'd come back from another direction towards me. And I mean, he just about mow me down. Sometimes he just push me and then run aside or something like that. So it was like a game he was playing. And I had to try to figure out where he was coming from. And so I started asking my buddy to help me. I was like, tell me which way he's coming. I'm going to turn around and look this way, and you tell me when he's coming from the other way. And he caught on to that. He caught on real quick to the fact that we were teaming up on him, because then he started talking. He started saying something to him like, I don't know how to imitate it, but it has some similarity to the Sierra sounds, the way they actually vocalize. But it's very much a language. And it was kind of very clear, no, you're not supposed to help him. That's not fair. And my friend who had this mind speak thing was like, dude, I'm gonna have to quit. I'm like, man, don't worry about what he says. Just do it. And he was like, man, I'm not going to argue with him. And I said, yeah, but he keeps mowing me down. But it was soft grass and soft ground. It had rained a couple of days before we got there, and the night we got there was raining. So it was still soft, and there's a lot of what they call frog's hair grass up there, which is a round grass, and it's real matted, and it's perfect. So even though I'm getting knocked down, it's not too aggressively, and I'm getting back up. God knows how many times I got knocked down, but he let me wrestle around with him and stuff like that. Like I said, I mean, I didn't have any chance. It looked like old wrestling videos of Andre the Giant wrestling with a jobber or something like that, just, playing around and then throwing him on the ground. And it really was something like that. And that was pretty cool. That went on for a little bit of time, and I kept telling my buddy, I was like, dude, you have got to come out here and enjoy. This is fucking amazing. Like, I'm on cloud nine. I'd never interacted with one at this level. I never thought this would happen. And the vibe is just awesome. And the moon is perfect and everything. And I'm on like cloud nine. I'm just thinking, man, this is the coolest thing that's ever happened to me. I don't know why you're not out here. And he's like, dude, I'm fine in the tent. I like, all right, just keep playing some music, play some Zeppelin, whatever, And I had enough batteries to keep that going. So that went on for a while. And then at some point, and this is something, Miguel, that I don't know. I mean, I almost don't know where to go with talking about this, but everything else is already kind of strange enough. So there were these 3 lights that came up the pipeline swath from the east. And I don't know, they were maybe 40, 50 feet off the ground. And they came towards us. And Sasquatch, the big guy, Erie, whatever, he pointed at them and called them something. And I didn't know if he liked them or what they were. I don't know what they were. It's already, there's, Bigfoot and everything I can wrap my head around. Now there's these 3 amber lights, more or less, coming up the pipeline swath towards us. Not super fast, but clearly they had to have gone very fast from wherever they came from. I have no idea where they came from. And they come towards us, and I'm standing there looking at them, and they start getting brighter, and then they come forward and back up, and there's a buzz to them, almost like drones have today. But, this is in 98, and there was no drone technology of that sort, nor was I expecting anything like that. But when they got bright, they had a very strong vibration. You could hear it. And they seemed to coalesce and then split apart. I don't know if they merged or just converged. I think it was more of a convergence. I have no idea what their propulsion was or anything like that. I'm just looking at them going, what in the hell is this? This doesn't, I can wrap my head around some other branch of Homo erectus or Denisovans or whatever they might be coming over here and adapting to the, situation with the giant fauna in that era there was in the Ice Age. And that's kind of what I thought of the Sasquatch to be, and more or less still do. But I didn't really like these lights. They were getting incredibly bright, too, at times, and then they would go dim, and then they would move real close. And I said, okay, what? I started yelling at them, like, what the fuck are you doing? Quit blinding me. And I don't, I'm not sure, why the Sasquatch isn't anywhere, he's not very close to me at this point. Like, he's more up by the tent. So I'm not sure this was the smartest thing I ever did, but I found a small rock, and picked it up and threw it at the lights. And that really set them off. And, and then it also upset Sasquatch, or Erie, because he started talking then, and he said something to me, and I wasn't sure what it was. Alan said, dude, he doesn't want you throwing rocks at them. And I said, okay, well, I thought they were, I don't, what the hell are they? I didn't know, are they bothering him or bothering me? And he said, no, he said they're friends. They're friends of his. I said, friends of his? He's a freaking wild person. These are flying through the air. What the hell is going on here? Like, this is just thrown the whole thing into a loop. And I picked up another rock, and then he looked at me and he gave me a real strong warning, like, no, don't throw any rocks at him. So I dropped it. I said, okay, man, I mean, I'm sorry. I thought they were bothering you. Like, what in the hell are they? And he called them something, which I guess meant something like friends. And I'm just going, all right. So I decide, okay, well, what do I do here? I guess I'll interact or talk to the lights in a way. Hey, I'm sorry. You know, don't know why you're here or what the hell you are, but I didn't mean to throw a rock at you. I won't throw any more. And they actually softened their gaze. I said, you know, I don't know what I'm dealing with here, Miguel. I know what Bigfoot is. I have no idea what these things are. And it's only thing I can do is just say, well, they do seem to have some sort of conscious. They seem to understand, have some cognition or something like that. So they'll understand me then if I say something like, okay, I'm sorry, I won't throw another rock. That's the only thing I can think to do. And it seemed to work. And they didn't hang around for very long. They hung around for a couple minutes and then took off. And I heard them vibrating or buzzing or whatever they did as they took off to the east, and then they shot off at an extremely fast rate. The only thing I can say that they remind me of today would be like some kind of high drone technology, but we didn't know of anything like that back then, one. And two, I didn't see any propulsion mechanism. Either drones, even the ones that the military uses in warfare and stuff like that, or you see, you know, now they have some obvious propulsion system. And I don't think they're incredibly expensive or anything. So I'm not sure that's what they were. It's the only thing I can kind of, you know, retrospectively relate them to.
Mm-hmm.
And
did they shoot off into the sky, or did they shoot off into the woods?
No, they stayed pretty down, no more than 50 or 60 feet above the ground,
mm-hmm.
and went east. And then it seemed like where that hill dropped down, they just dropped down with it. And after that, they're out of sight.
Yeah,
but they didn't fly up into the sky, you know?
Mm-hmm. When I had Bigfoot activity here, I seen the orbs too, and they were an amber color. There's two of them, and they were probably about 3 or 4 feet off the ground, moving together.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was people like with lanterns, like old school lanterns or cell phones, but I wasn't sure what it was. I didn't get close to it, but later on I had encounters there in that area.
Wow. Well, I mean, I've heard of this, you know. I've heard of this. This was the first time and the last time that I saw any orbs associated with a Bigfoot. I mean, I had subsequent Bigfoot encounter, and of course I'd had previous ones. Never was this involved. This was the only time. And the whole episode may have lasted 15 minutes. I don't know. You know, I guess nobody else has ever thrown a rock at them. It does upset them, and they get very bright, and they converge, and they kind of come toward me real fast. But I had been somewhat menaced by them before I did that. I'm not like out there think I'm tough or something, throwing rocks and shit in the sky. I don't even know what the hell it is, but they kept getting brighter, and they were really irritating me, you know. And I was like, "What? Just quit doing that. What are you doing?" And so that's when I just thought, well, fuck it. If you're gonna do that, all right. You know, if all I got is a rock to throw at you, I'm gonna throw a rock at you, you know. But I was warned the second time by Bigfoot, don't throw any more rocks at my friends. And I was like, okay, big guy, you know. It was a very clear warning. It wasn't, you know, threat. It wasn't. I wasn't going to argue. And he was, like I said, the whole time, he wasn't right next to me at that point. He was up there by the tent, and I'm in the middle of the pipeline swath all by myself. But I could not find any propulsion mechanism on them. I don't know what did you notice when you saw them that they had a buzz, or in the brighter they got, the stronger the buzz was?
I didn't hear any sound. It was silent.
You didn't?
But
I only heard the sound when they got really bright, but they did have a buzz.
Yeah, I did get the sense though that they were intelligent, and I don't know, I felt like I shouldn't go near them. And later on, I learned that the Native Americans say, you know, if you see the bright lights or the orbs, don't go near them.
Well, they came near me. I didn't go near them. I mean, they came toward me, and much to my annoyance there for a while. But whatever, that's interesting. I still to this day have no idea. That was, of all the weird things that happened that night, that was what we considered the weirdest thing that happened. But so anyway, that happens, and then things relax again. They're gone. I'm just okay, and then Erie wants to play some more, and this is where it did get kind of scary. So he at some point decided to pick me up in the air and hold me out in front of him. He picks me up under the shoulders and he holds me right in front of him. And he's just holding me in the midair, and I weigh about 200 pounds, and it's not even difficult for him. Even though I was there I thought, well, he's gonna get tired of holding me after about a minute. And he's just smiling and laughing and looking right at me and holding me about eye level. And at some point, I'm like, dude, let me down. Like, I'm just getting kind of annoyed by this and uncomfortable. And we've already been playing around and roughhousing and everything, and I'm not really scared. And I try to kick off of him to get him to let me go, because I figure, well, the ground's soft. If I'm up no higher than this, I'll be all right. And that was an accidental mistake that could have gone real bad, because when I go to kick off him, I think I'm kicking him like on his leg or his stomach or something like that. I end up kicking him right in his junk. All right. Now he's got a dong like a freaking donkey, so it wasn't hard to miss. And he throws me right on the ground, and then I'm like, oh shit, I did not mean to do that. Like, that was a fucked up mess. And now he's, got me. I'm on the ground on my back, and he's obviously upset. Like, what the hell did you go and do that for? And so he proceeds to go and kick me a couple times. Now, he didn't haul off and kick me hard or stomp on me or do anything like that. My buddies up in the tent said, oh, that was good, dude. Now he wants to kill you. And I'm going, oh, shit. And I'm sitting there looking at him like, bro, that was a mistake. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. That was a mistake. And I don't know if he understands that at all. But he's trying to, he's kicked me in the side, in the back of the leg. And at some point, I realize what he's doing. He's trying to kick me in my junk. So he kicks me in the back of the leg at one spot, at one point. He's got big old feet, so they actually don't hurt too bad. And like I said, he's not like kicking me to where I'm going to be severely injured or something like that. I'm more or less getting a spanking, like a don't ever do that again spanking. But I realized, okay, I know what he's trying to do. So when he got close enough, I just put on a performance like he kicked me right in the balls, and just went, ah! I'm lying on the ground, putting on a show. And he quit. And he said whatever he said was probably like, yeah, how you like it being done to you. Don't ever do that again. And I'm still like, bro, that was a total accident. I did not mean to do that, And it would got tense there for a minute. I was probably, I probably spent a good 3 or 4 minutes going, oh shit, this is went from so awesome to being on cloud nine and feeling like I was on top of the world to now I'm going, all right, I just fucked everything up with one mistake. And, I'm hoping that I can somehow talk my way out of this. I don't know, get, or somehow make him realize I didn't mean to do that, And I think he kind of understood at some point, but he did still make, clear if I did something he didn't like. I noticed this earlier too. If I pulled his hair by accident or something like that, he would do the same thing right back. He never injured me. He could have, but it was like, okay, you don't like that being done to you, don't do that to me. And that was kind of what I understood there. So then he calmed down, and my buddy that's can do the mind speak thing with him said, he's not going to kill you. He's just pissed at you. And I said, well, I understand, but I didn't mean to do that. I said, why don't you tell him with your mind speak that was an accident? I'm like, negotiate for me, please. But it seemed to work. I think he, at some point laughed, and then Erie, the Sasquatch, laughed, and he realized. I said, man, I did not mean to do that. That was a mistake. But I was trying to get you to put me down. You was holding me up and holding me out in front of you in the middle of the air, laughing, and you got a wicked laugh. I mean, it was kind of disturbing at first, but then I thought, well, when are you going to put me the hell down here? I'll just, push myself off of you, and I didn't mean to do it the way I did it. So that was that was kind of scary there for a minute. It was because you're lying on the ground and the 7'2" Bigfoot's walking around you, basically talking trash to you. I don't know, telling you what you did wrong and giving you a spanking. It's it's a scary moment. But then he got interested in my knee brace. Got really interested in my knee brace and wondered why I had the knee brace on and almost wanted to take it off. And I'm like, there's no way I'm taking this knee brace off because I don't even have cruciate ligaments at this point. I had my knee reconstructed is what it was. It was patella tendon and collaterals. And so I'm like, nah, bro, I got to keep the knee brace on because it keeps my leg from going in places it's not supposed to go. So I think my friend told me that maybe the stupidest thing he'd ever heard in his life was me spend 10 minutes trying to explain what a knee brace was to Bigfoot. And he kept on trolling me, too, from the tent. I would try and explain it, and he said, he doesn't understand you. You need to explain it again. And he's saying this from the tent, and I'm on the ground still. I haven't gotten up yet. And he's saying, oh, no, you haven't explained it well enough to him. You need to explain it some more. But what Erie did figure out was that the knee brace could make a really cool handle to swing me around by, which was scary because I had to hold the thigh part of it, which was molded, and he grabs my whole calf, and he's just swinging me around like you would a kid. You grab your little cousins or your little brother or something, sister, whatever, by the ankles and swing them around and swing them around. And that's what he was doing. And, yeah, he let go, too, and let me go tumbling in the grass. And thought that was real funny. He got a big kick out of that and laughed, and he's got a wicked laugh too. This one thought everything was funny that he did and laughed a lot. I don't know if that's common with them, but he definitely had a sense of humor. And never got my knee brace off either. I kept the knee brace on, to my credit, but I did get swung around by it, and I was getting kind of tired of getting beat up, even though the ground was soft. I'd spent a lot of time on it, and I was just like, all right, dude, I'm getting kind of tired of getting beat up. And I think the last part that it was enough for me was he ran away like he did and then came running towards me, and our heads collided. And, I mean, I got a pretty tough skull. I've taken some good blows, but I wasn't going to win a headbutting contest with Bigfoot. And, I mean, he nailed me right on top of the head. I don't think it was intentional, but it was right where my parietal bone and frontal bone come together. And I was right back on the ground just holding my head like, oh, my God. It felt like I got hit by a kettlebell or something. And I got up and I was like, man, I'm done, okay? I'm going back to the tent and lying down like you kicked my ass enough. I hope you've enjoyed yourself, but this has been pretty awesome. So I go back to the tent, and he's all right, he just kind of walks back up there, and I think, okay, well, he's going to go back where he goes, and I'm going to go in the tent. This is a 3-man Coleman dome tent. It's not a big tent. For 2 people, it's crowded. Because, tents is always 1 or 2 less than what it says it is. And plus, we got backpacks in there, or at least one of them's in there. The stereo, the little boom box, so it's not little at all, and all that shit. And I get in the tent, and then here he decides he's going to get in the tent with us. And so he actually unzips the tent. He understands how the zipper on the tent works. And starts crawling in there, and I think my head was probably to the west, and he crawls in and lays down halfway in and halfway out of the tent. And he lays down right between us. And I'm yelling at my buddy, man, get the CDs out the way. Make sure he don't break any CDs. And my buddy's like, oh, my God, there's no fucking way I'm spending the night in this tent. Like, this is crazy. I'm leaving. I'm going to go spend the night outside if you two are going to stay in the tent. And I said, well, how are you going to get out? He's blocked the door, or pretty much. So he said, I'll get out. I'll crawl over him. And the Sasquatch, Erie, I'm going to call him Erie still. That's who I'm talking about. I'm just call him Erie because I don't just the Sasquatch or the big guy or whatever. I mean, we, later on gave him this name. I was calling him Forest Spirit. That's actually what I was calling him. I said, you're like the Forest Spirit. You're like if there was a hominid, a sort of incarnation of the Forest Spirit, that would be you. I even said that to him. I think he kind of understood me too because he at least seemed to approve of it. So he's lying down halfway in it, And he looks over at us, and he points to himself at one point and calls himself something. And it was like Lacona or Tacona or Nakona or something like this. And that Kona part stuck in my head because I knew a Kona in Hawaii. Grandmother had a place out there. It's on the dry side of the Big Island. And plus, it's like Kona coffee and stuff like that. But ever since a kid, I'd been out there as a kid. Kona has always stuck in my head. And he called himself that. And I'm not sure if this is his name or not, but that's what he calls himself. And he points at us, both of us, and he calls us something like a Coda or Lakota. It almost sounded to me like Lakota, like the Lakota Sioux up in the Dakotas, you know. And I'm thinking, what's this? Alan said that means friends. He's calling us his friends. And I was like, awesome. And I took my hand and like rubbed his head and shook his head and said, man, you're pretty fucking cool. And he puts his hand over my head and he's got his thumb on my jaw on one side and like his fingers on my jaw on the other. Like he palms my entire head. And I'm like, oh, please don't break my neck by accident. I've heard of people saying that they palm their head through the tent or something. Well, this one palmed my head right there in the tent. And he didn't. He just kind of shook my head a little bit from side to side gently and laughed. And but it took me a while to get this, but he would say Lakota. And he'd point to himself and say Nakona. And I'm not anywhere close to how deep and resonant his voice was, but it was, it was pretty strong. And I think I pointed over at my buddy and said fucking asshole or something to see if I could get him to say it. I was kind of having fun with him, and he did. He managed to somehow squeeze that out. He could imitate our words pretty well. I mean, if he tried to, way better than I could imitate his speaking. I could not imitate his language at all to say a word like Nakona or Lakota I could, but when he was just talking about the lights or yelling at me for something I did wrong or whatever else he was saying, it was clearly an intelligible, a language that should be like, there were words. It wasn't just a bunch of onomatopoeia or, sounds to imitate. Yeah, that would be the term for it. These are words that they have. Whether there's a grammar to it or anything like that, I have no idea. I mean, that's a little bit much I have no idea, but there were words, definitely. And it's a language. And I've said this, it's very, very interesting. And yeah, when I years, actually was decades later that I would hear the Sierra sounds, I didn't hear quite the same kind of carrying on as I heard in the Sierra sounds. That seemed like quite a performance, but the vocalization is very similar. And the ranges and stuff like that, I say those are legit by me, for whatever that's worth. But and then okay. So then he mercifully got out of the tent and ended up spending the night right by the fire. Now, one thing that he also did all night long is he would get up and piss on the fire. He thought that was the funniest thing in the world. And I've heard this, but I didn't. They don't like the way when we're camping, we just go outside the tent somewhere where we're not going to be and take a piss out in the grass and the whatever. He didn't like that. He totally didn't think that was cool at all. And when we did it, he, seemed to have he didn't come over there and stop us or something like that, but he complained about it, I guess you could say. He thought that was very, I guess, disrespectful. And I swear to God, at one point he pissed on the tent because it smelled like it in the morning. And I think that was his way of getting back at us. Like he thought we were just, something. I'm like, where the hell are we supposed to go? And he points off into the forest. I'm like, I'm not walking out there in those spruces in the night. I can't even see where I'm going out there, But he didn't really like that that campers and people just do that. I don't know if this is something I've heard other people stories where they say, yeah, they take that as some sort of a disrespectful thing. I didn't get my ass kicked over it, but he made it clear that he thought that was just terrible, but then he thought pissing on the fire all night long was just funny as hell because he would do it and laugh, and he ended up putting the fire out that way. So he slept by the fire. I mean, he woke up after daybreak in the morning because I woke up and I had my head to the west because that's where the entrance to the tent was facing. And he got up. I heard him get up, and it wasn't high sun, but it was daylight enough. It wasn't like right at the break of day or something. I mean, it was fully light. And he walked by the tent and said something and smacked the tent and walked on, and that was the last we saw of him on that camping trip. And I just remember looking out. That was daylight now, so it's not night. And I remember looking at his lower legs, and you could see his skin through his fur down at his lower legs. His legs weren't so fur covered that you couldn't see it. So I could see his skin down there, and I was just going, Jesus, look at the size of his fucking ankles. I mean, he just got these massive lower legs, and I'm looking at him at daylight like, damn, I mean, what a freaking giant. And walked off, and we woke up a little bit later and packed up everything. Now, they do smell really bad, and I didn't realize it at that point, or he did, how bad I smelled now. And my buddy kept telling me, dude, you just freaking stink. So I said, well, when we get down by the road, there's the creek down there. I'll go take a bath in the creek. And I did, but I guess I still smelled pretty bad because this is funny. I told you it's a Forest Service road. And up at the end of it that morning when we walked down, it was probably maybe 11 or 12, I don't know, maybe 10 or 11 in the morning. I told you I had blisters on my feet. They were horrible, on the balls of both of my feet. And I knew that 3.5 mile walk was going to be excruciating. But there's one of these Forest Service dump trucks parked down there. Now, of course, he can get in the gated roads. These are Forest Service guys, one of those big, dual rear axle dump trucks that have the grader blade underneath of it. And I thought, well, I guess he's come out here to grade the road for whatever reason. But the driver was nowhere around. So we just see the dump truck. And I said, well, shit, wherever the driver went, maybe went for a hike or something like that, or went to check on a trail or whatever. Maybe we can catch a ride with him if he comes back down the road. Because he's going to be going the same direction as us to get back out. And sure enough, after about 20 minutes of walking, here comes the dump truck up the road. And so when he got by us, I said, man, I got the worst blisters on my feet. Do you mind if we just grab a hold of the outside of the truck? We'll just hold on to the handle there. One of those big rigs have those handles on the side and ride out to the car. He said, all right, go ahead, get up on there and hang on. And so I was hanging on and I was on the driver's side. And the truck driver, the Forest Service guy, he said, I got to roll the window up. I wish you'd have got on the other side. And I said, good Lord, do I smell that bad? And he said, you want me to be honest? Now, I'm outside the truck, and he's got his window rolled down. He's driving, obviously. And I said, yeah, because I can't tell. And he said, you smell like a dead animal rolled in shit. And I said, really? Ugh. Nasty, but I can't tell. I just don't realize how bad I smell, honestly. If I smell my clothes real close, they stink, but I don't realize that I smell that bad to other people. So he rolled the window up on the driver's side and rode the rest of the way to the where my truck was parked at the end of it. And we went down to Seneca Rocks area. There's a store down there called Yoakum's Store. And anybody remembers back in the late 90s or early 2000s, there was the wooden gray building there that had pizzas in a restaurant upstairs. They had real good pizzas. And so I wanted to go have a pizza out on the balcony. I mean, we've been camping for all these days and had this, wild Bigfoot experience and everything. And so I go upstairs in the restaurant, and the waitress, God bless her, she walks out of the kitchen to seat us and just stops about 10 feet from me. And I went, we'll sit outside. And she just goes, yeah. And I'm good. Look, I know I stink. I don't realize how bad I smell, though, but I've just been camping for a while. Obviously, I wasn't going to tell her where the smell came from. And so she served us out on the balcony, and nobody else went out there, thank God. And Yeah, the pizza was awesome, but and we left her a good tip. And I said, yeah, I know. I've been told already that I smell like a dead animal rolled in shit. Is that about right? And she just looked at me like and nodded her head and said, yeah, that's about right. And I said, well, I'm probably not gonna smell much better till I get home in about 4 hours. That was about how far I lived at the time. And so we drove on home, and I spent, a couple of days barely walking because of the blisters on my feet. But um, that was the first of two Bigfoot encounters up there at Roaring Plains. And I earlier I'd said that he identified himself as Lucifer. That was actually before we got back in the tent. That was before we got back in the tent, but that was after I had accidentally kicked him in the wrong place and got uh my butt kicked and spanked and then, made up and everything. And he pointed off in that direction and said Lucifer, and I just went, how could you be the same one? There's no way. My buddy said, yeah, he knows you. And I go, how could he know me? I've never been up here before. I've never been camping up here before. And then I realized what he was saying, and I put the story together, and I thought, man, how the hell did you get out here and why? This is almost like the orbs. I have no way of explaining this. First of all, why would he be there, just maybe 4 or 5, not even 5 months, 4 months, 3 months? This was probably March, April, May, June, early June. From when I was up there at Shenandoah Park the same year. And to get from one to the other. Now, granted, you can see those ridges that from either the Blue Ridge or from the Allegheny. That's the furthest ridge you see. Whether you're looking west, the Allegheny is the furthest one you see from the Blue Ridge, and vice versa. But at that camping spot there, right where I'm at, I don't get it. I don't understand that. And I mean, it's not an easy trip. There's a lot of wild country. There's mountains you have to cross, like Massanutten and North Mountain and South Branch Mountain. But there's highways. There's US 340, US 11, Interstate 81, US 220. There are farms. There's all this country. So I'm just like thinking to myself, how in the hell did he get from Shenandoah National Park to the Allegheny front, and why? I didn't think until that point that he was the same one. I just thought he was, that he's just another one. Maybe they're, same kind of animal, same kind of thing. I didn't know that that was the same one. Because, I mean, the one at the shelter, I didn't have that much interaction. I mean, he picked a table up, and I stayed on that table until I had to get up in the morning and walk back down the mountain. And of course, I couldn't get a very good look at him inside the shelter when he was like halfway up under the table. I get off the table, and I told in the last part one that he scooted off into the corner. Now it's dark. I can't even see him. I just know he's over there and he's growling, and I got to kind of talk him down so I can get my bag because I don't want to leave it up there. Maybe somebody else would have just left the bag. I was like, well, I mean, the bag's away from him. If it was in the same corner as he was in, I probably would have left it. But it was in the other corner, so I was like, just get the bag, and it was all good. But I didn't. That was weird, And like I said, I'll tell you in another. This is going on for a while, and we'll probably have to make that. I hate to do it, but we'll probably have to make that a part 3. But okay. Those were the only 2 times I saw him up there. I've been up there lots of times since. Now, later on, I would hear people mention the hairy man up there. There's also been other Bigfoot sightings in the Canaan Valley and in Dolly Sods area. I don't know if they're related to this one. There was a BFRO report that I read from 2006 because I was looking up, reports in Randolph County and Pocahontas area. Well, this is Randolph County. It's actually on the line with Pendleton. It's up in northeast corner of Randolph County. So it's actually Grant County and Randolph and not Pendleton, excuse me. Oh, well, wait a minute. Yeah, because Seneca Rocks is in Pendleton. So it's kind of on the line of those 3, but it's on the eastern edge of Randolph. And I did see a report where somebody said they saw one about 7-some feet tall, and the guy said he was built like the way he put it, like a racing dog was the only way he could put it. It wasn't like a dog man kind of thing. This was a Sasquatch. But I thought, my God, that's the same one. I mean, that's one way to describe him, just really muscular and lean and and that was from 2006. So that was, you know, 7 years later after what I'm talking about. And I remember hearing people in the around 04, 05 mention the hairy man. Even somebody asked me if I had ever seen him, and I was like, "Oh God, yes." What do you know about him? So other people encountered him. I've never heard any other stories from up there though. In any of the, I've been listening for a Sasquatch story that would talk about encountering one up there like him, because I'm thinking if he's that comfortable with us, I'm not sure that we would be the only campers that he ever encountered and made himself known around. Now the other side to it is everybody else would probably just be terrified, but maybe not. I'm not saying not necessarily, but
What
I
did
haven't heard any other.
what did the Sasquatch feel like? Like, what did it feel like when you were wrestling with it?
Oh well, he's solid. His hair was real kind of coarse. Not It's kind of coarse like the way bears is, but not as dense.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Like a possum, or what do you mean?
No, 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 not the possum. A little much heavier than that.
But
Much
no, I
heavy.
mean like the hair. How'd that feel?
Yeah, that's what I said. His hair was almost like a little, a little, not as dense, but kind of the way a bear's would be.
Okay. Yeah.
Similar, not a whole lot different. I mean, it was not quite as dense at first, especially on his forearms and lower legs and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I did get him at one point to flex his bicep. It looked like a bowling ball under his bicep. I said, "My God, man, this dude's a freaking monster." Me and my buddy had a friend named Vic, and he was about 6'2", 6'3", and he had massive shoulders and upper chest and everything. He was one of those people that could, incline press about as much as he could flat press, and overhead press just ridiculous amounts of weight, like 285 or something like that for reps. And we said, yeah, he's built kind of like that, just about a foot taller and almost a foot wider, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I mean, I could reach around his waist. I could get my arms around his waist and lock my arm with my wrist, or grab my wrist.
Mm-hmm. Did it have long fingernails, or did the nails look like ours?
They were real heavy. I didn't, notice that they were extraordinary. That they were like really long and unkempt. I never got scratched
Mm-hmm.
by accident or anything like that. I mean, can't say I really remember his fingernails that well. I think when he palmed my head, I don't really remember feeling nails dig into my neck or anything like that. I just remember that, I'm like, whoa, he's got a thumb on one side, on one jaw,
Mm-hmm.
and fingers on the other jaw. He's really got my entire head palmed. Now, he did have opposable digits. That's something I actually got him to show. I actually got him to do that. Because you know how like apes don't have opposable digits. Is that true? I don't know if that's even true. But I think they can squeeze with their thumb and with their fingers, but they can't like touch each finger with the end of their thumb. I'm not sure that's absolutely true with apes, but I know he could. Now I don't know if he did it real fast. I mean, he wasn't necessarily going to play piano or something like that right off the bat, but he did have opposable digits. I do remember trying to see if he could do that. And once he realized what I was trying to get him to do, he kind of went, he kind of, okay, yeah, sure, I can do that.
Yeah. Well, that's a very interesting story, and I appreciate you sharing that with me. And you say there's a lot more that you want to talk about, possibly
Well,
do a
there was
part
a
three.
second camping trip. There was a second camping trip with the same buddy, and then another one, and then
Mm-hmm.
two dogs. And then after that, I went camping up there. I've seen his tracks before, or after that, excuse me. I saw his tracks, but didn't see him. I went camping up there with my cousin. I went on a lot of day hikes up there. Heck, I went on day hikes up there with a lot of my friends. I even took my mom up there on a day hike once when the road was open, so that she didn't have to walk all the way up the road. You know, those are day hikes, and a lot of people hike up there. I mean, it's not a incredibly common there. Dolly Sides is crowded. I mean, Dolly Size is just out and out crowded. It's got that road that runs along the side of it, and weekends they've even started gating the road off just because it gets so crowded and it gets dusty and washboarded and that kind of thing. And they do gating the road into Roaring Plains is good because otherwise it would have a lot of traffic on it, and somebody'd invariably try and take a camper out there and then have to back up, and there's a ditch on one side and a bank you don't want to go off on the other, and it's a good road, but it's not a really wide road. So there's not a lot of places where two vehicles can pass each other without it being real scary. And they have had to have recoveries and stuff like that. So it's just they realize they open it, I think, for hunting season is what they do. Because people will bear hunt up there. I think it's a rough place to bear hunt. They use the dogs. I don't know why anybody want to run their dogs up in there. It's such a rough area in some areas off the trails, and some of the laurel or the rhododendron thickets are so heavy. It's if you gotta usually when you go, I don't bear hunt with dogs, but when people do, a lot of times they just end up hunting for their dogs at the end of the day. That's in fact most of the time they end up hunting for at least a dog. And up there, I can imagine it being just a horrible situation to try to deal with. Now, some areas, the meadows and places like that, it's really open. You can also cut from the road up to the meadows at some point. I did that. I think it was about a year later. I went up there in the winter and got my truck stuck and had to get it pulled off of a snow drift that everyone else drove over, and I crashed through. That's another story. But that was a trip where I didn't see Erie, but I did see his tracks because my buddy who I was with, a different friend of mine, and this guy it was funny because I said, well, look, man, it's getting late. Let's just cut from the road up to the meadows. And he said, well, you know where you are. I don't. And I said, yeah, I don't want to walk all the way up to the pipeline swap, but we'll walk back that way. So we decided to just make a shortcut to the meadows and go up beside this little creek. And sure enough, we see these tracks. And I'm like, oh, Jesus, because this friend that I'm with will probably freak out if he sees this thing. So I said, well, he goes, what kind of tracks are these? I said, I think they're snowshoe tracks, man. Maybe somebody was up here snowshoeing. And he said, snowshoeing my ass. He said, they don't look like snowshoe tracks. And I said, well, I mean, what the hell are they then? They were, big tracks, and they weren't that old, but it was in about a foot and a little over a foot of snow. So they, the snow breaks down, and it kind of, how it does, it covers them a little bit. And he said, dude, I'm 6'4", and I can't match this stride. I can only match it by really stretching my legs out or jumping. Like, what the hell? And he doesn't believe any of this stuff, and I've never told him anything at this point. And he just looked at me and he said, dude, the tracks have toes. They have fucking toes. And I'm like, man, who's going to be up here barefoot and, taller than you running through the woods? And I'm going, oh, good Lord. He's already not wanting to be out this late and already thinks we should have gone back, and he's hitting his inhaler. He's got asthma. It's bothering him. Oh, he's a real fit, athletic dude at the same time. And I'm just going, oh, goodness, this is going to be interesting. And he looked at me and said, are there Bigfoot up here? And I was like, man, it's not that wild up here. And I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be a hell of a fucking day. It's already been one getting the truck out of the damn drift. And luckily the tracks veered north and we kind of veered south, and that was it. So if he was up there and noticed us, we didn't notice him. And then my friend was feeling a lot better about it, and he didn't have any problem going back down the pipeline swath and walking back that way. But while we were following those tracks for, maybe a half a mile, he didn't like it at all. He was just freaked out because he was like, these are huge tracks. They've got toes and they've got a stride that I can't match at 6'4". And I'm just thinking, well, yeah, that's because he's probably about 7'4". But I didn't say anything, and we didn't run into him, so it was probably a good thing. I mean, I could have been like, oh, no, you don't have anything to worry about, but you're not, I mean, come on, man. Somebody doesn't even believe in that and doesn't know anything about that, and then they see one. You're not going to just, oh, it's okay, be cool. They're going to probably lose their shit, so.
Yeah. Well,
I hope I didn't cuss too much. I think I left out the you knows and the likes as much as I could. I heard that in part one. It made me cringe, but I thought, well, yeah, but William, you did cuss a little bit more in this one, but you know, it was kind of part of the trip.
Yeah, it's all right. Well, yeah, I guess you'll just have to get back with me whenever you want to finish the rest, or if you want to leave it at that, it's up to you.
No, I'll do that last one because that was interesting too, and that's where that'll be an interesting one. But this was enough, I think, for one, because I'm, you know, kind of at the end of my storytelling capacity right now. I think it's been altogether a pretty long one.
Yeah.
But, well, okay.
All right. Well, William, I appreciate your time, and yeah, I'll just keep texting you, and we'll try to find another day or time to do the rest of the story.
Okay. Well, thank you, Miguel, and hope, you know, this isn't too weird for everybody who really liked part one, but I mean, it is what it is.
Oh, I appreciate it, and I enjoyed the story.
Okay, well, I appreciate it. All right, well, thanks again, man.
Yeah, thank you, and we'll be in touch soon.
Okay.
All right, you have a good one, man.
Cool. Later, bro.
Bye.
All right, thank you again, William, for sharing your Bigfoot encounters here on Sasquatch Theory, and I really enjoyed listening to everything you had to say. You gave a lot of detail with the story, and it was very interesting. There was a lot that happened in this story, and I had to listen to it a few times to fully understand the gravity of the situation that William had. I wonder why the Sasquatch chose to interact with them on that level, and I do believe that the orbs were the other Sasquatch clan members. I do have to say, William dealt with the encounter very well, and I think a lot of people that would have experienced this encounter would be very disturbed right now and would have a very hard time talking about it, and openly for that matter. William said the Bigfoot was trying to vocalize something and it sounded like Lakota. What does that mean? Does anyone know? Let me know down in the comments. Alright guys, I think that about wraps it up. I appreciate everyone for listening, everyone's positive support, and thank you very much. Until the next one. Later.